Hi, my name is J Patterson, and this is a video to introduce you to HTML 101, in preparation for going on and doing some more formal work in learning the HTML language. Some key points. There are a lot of tools that will write HTML documents for you, and you never have to look at the contents of the HTML file. For example, What You See Is What You Get editors, various products from Adobe or other graphic design companies, even a Microsoft Word document can be output as HTML. And you can design the whole thing in Word and never have to look at the HTML. So we acknowledge that you don't necessarily have to look at HTML in order to make HTML documents. But being able to write and understand raw HTML is going to give you insight into why websites behave the way that they do. And even automatically generated HTML, for example, that comes from Word or other tools, those pages sometimes need some manual tweaks in order to add innovative new things to them. Things that, for example, Microsoft Word doesn't support out of the box, but that you want to add to it. Also, if you come across an HTML file, it's helpful to be able to know how to read it so that you can extract information from it, or perhaps recognize that some kind of problem is happening upstream of the HTML document. So let's just start by looking at a very simple HTML example. Here's a file, here's a HTML document that I wrote and just put on my local computer and served it from a web server on my computer. You can see it's got the word Hello World at the top. It's got a picture of a logo that I use on websites. Here's the HTML document that generated it. If you're familiar with the way HTML tag structure and XML tag structure works, you can see that this document conforms to that. We have a root tag, which is HTML. That tag has two children, head and body. Head has a child that's called title, and title has data that says awesome web page. Head and title are both described in the HTML documentation, but they're standard HTML tags. The title in the head section of an HTML document puts words in the browser tab in the browser where it's rendered. So you can see that awesome web page shows up in the tab, not in the contents of the web page. In the body, I have two children, an H1 tag and an IMG tag. H1 stands for headline level 1. And the IMG stands for the image tag. The image tag, you can see the H1 is opened and closed kind of in the standard XML way. You can see that the image tag is closed with a shortcut. It has a / at the very end of it, making it well-formed XML without requiring a separate closing tag. The image tag has two attributes, an alt tag, which is a way to describe the image for people who are visually impaired, and then a SRC tag, which says, where on the internet can I find the picture that should go here? And then a URL that describes a location on my website where it can be found. Together, these end up rendering the web page in the background. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Need to know a little bit about the structure of HTML in order to get that to render. Here's a few more tags to introduce you to. First of all is the anchor tag with a hypertext reference. This tag is what made the internet the internet. This was the primary innovation that Tim Berners-Lee introduced when he created the structure and syntax for the World Wide Web. The way this works is that an A tag has an opening and closing, just like all tags. It stands for anchor. It has an attribute called href, or hypertext reference. And the attribute is assigned a value of another IRI or URL on the internet. And then the data that comes between the closing tag, this opening tag and the closing tag, is shown on the web page. But by virtue of it being a child of the A tag, it becomes clickable. And this is how a link is created. And this was the fundamental innovation of the World Wide Web, was the link. So you can see that rendered on the right. Then there are a number of different headline levels or heading levels. See H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, standard opening and closing. And you can see how they default render over on the right. Large headlines down to smallest headlines. Final example on this page is the P tag. That stands for paragraph. A standard tag, opens and closes. And the child of the P tag, if there's text there, gets rendered in whatever the browser standard is for font and color and size. If we look at that specifically in full HTML, you can see all the tags that we saw before with the root tag of HTML, the addition of the head child of HTML and the title tag showing up in the browser tab, and then each of the different components that was described in the bulleted list, just placed in just placed in formal actual HTML. This is the document that's being rendered on the browser behind me. Here's some other examples of some basic HTML tags that are kind of interesting. The UL tag, the OL tag, these stand for unordered list and ordered list. Over on the rendered version in the browser, you can see that item 1 and item 2 are part of an unordered list. They're bulleted, but not numbered. Item 3 and item 4 are part of an ordered list. They're numbered 1 and 2. When we decide to put that into HTML, we create it with the HTML shown here under the list item tag. And the way it works is that the outer tag, UL, interacts with the child tag, L1, such that if the LI tag is a child of UL, the way we render it is as bullets. But if the LI tag is a child of OL, the way we render it is with numbers. And you can see that the numbers 1 and 2 never show up in the HTML. They are implied and they are generated by the browser as it's reading this HTML just by numbering them in turn. And so that's taken care of automatically by the browser. Finally, you can see an image tag. The IMG tag has a source attribute, which has an IRI or a URL for where the image can be found. And a lot of optional attributes are possible. For example, a width attribute, which specifies in this case how many pixels wide this rocket ship image should be. Let's look at all of these HTML tags in context and an actual document. You can see we have the HTML root, we have the head and the body. Head is the same as previous example. And here we have the UL and LI, the OL and LI tags, followed by the image tag. I use the shortcut closing on the image tag. I guess one point to be made is the indentation that's present here in the HTML reflects the nesting structure of the opening and closing tags. It reinforces the idea that there is a tree structure abstractly in what we're creating, but it's not necessary. The indentations are really helpful for humans to be able to understand the structure of the document, but it's not a requirement for it to render correctly or for it to be considered well-formed XML. So a few closing thoughts on HTML before you go on to look at the language more formally. Really, only a small set of knowledge is needed to get a basic website written in HTML. Kind of this lecture is all you need to know about how to write the file, and then you just need to know where to put it so a browser can find it. And this simplicity, this ease of being able to write HTML documents and put information on the internet, this is one of the foundational reasons why the World Wide Web took off the way it did. You can just put a document up. It doesn't take a whole lot of expertise to write that document, and it's visible for the whole world. And if you see someone else and you like the way that they wrote their document, you can actually look at the HTML and examine how they created the visual impression that they did. And as long as it's not too complicated, you can copy it in your own presentation. Another reason why the World Wide Web took off like it did in the beginning. Being able to manually read and edit HTML is a skill that some people use professionally, but being able to do it exposes you both to the limits and the expectations of the HTML medium. So to summarize, the key points that I want you to take away. Although there are a lot of tools that are out there that are going to write HTML for you, particularly ones that start with a graphical design editor. But being able to read and write and understand raw HTML is very helpful for being able to understand what's going on in a particular web application that you're working on. And even automatically generated HTML has bugs that being able to read the HTML will help you solve or will help you to add new innovative aspects to your HTML document. Hope this is helpful in getting you kick-started on understanding HTML, and that it will be a good launching point for a more formal introduction to the language. Thank you for your attention.